Well, hey there, friends. It's Amanda, and we are back with a final episode for the month of love. And I'm going on a wild tangent today. I had originally planned to talk about dating and relationships and how to really amplify those in sobriety. And based on last week's episode and the feedback that I'm getting, I actually want to go in a completely different, yet still love centered direction. And I want to talk about something that I think is going to be very, very important to you and very, very resonant in some of your journeys. And also something that is a little more abstract that you might not have ever had your attention turned to. And that is seeing through the sober eyes of love. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, I talked about main character energy and how I'm really committing to living in that energy in this 37th year of my life. And so many of the examples that I offered you in that episode were based around taking bold, inspired action. And while that is very, very important because we need to, of course, keep the plot of our life moving forward, I only talked for a very, very little bit at the very end about really being in main character energy also equals being centered in yourself so that you can be responsive versus reactive in the game of life. And that is an emotional and spiritual skill that you can cultivate. And now you can cultivate this at any time, of course, but I found it particularly difficult to attempt to cultivate this skill when I was still drinking. And many of you know my story that I stopped drinking as part of my spiritual journey. But for over a year and a half before I really committed to changing my relationship with alcohol, I had been on a spiritual path and I was studying with some of the greatest spiritual teachers that our time has brought forward. I was reading Marianne Williamson. I was going to see Gabby Bernstein in person. I was reading Wayne Dyer. I was studying A Course in Miracles. And I remember during that time just really feeling and understanding all the information that I was receiving, but I wasn't able to really apply it to my life. It was really, really difficult for me to make sense of it. And that's because when we are drinking, we often are coming from a reactive place. We're coming from a place where our brain has literally been rewired and optimized to see through the lens of fear. And from a metaphysical or spiritual perspective, I do teach from A Course in Miracles quite frequently. And the Course teaches that there are two ways in which we see the world. And one is through the lens of fear, and that is the lens of judgment, of separation, of lack, of frustration, of victimhood. And one is through the lens of love, and that is the lens of connection, possibility, prosperity, abundance. And when I was drinking, I could not help but to see the world through the lens of fear. And again, I want to iterate that that doesn't mean that I was like paranoid or anything. Sometimes I was, but you're not necessarily living in paranoia. You're just seeing from that more negatively focused perspective. And so, even though people would have said that I was an extremely positive, funny, outgoing, loving person, more often than not, the background tape in my head that was looping was, what did I do wrong? Why don't they like me? That person is this, that, or the other. I don't have enough. This person is out to get me. I am the victim of something. I have it so hard. Why can't things work out for me? And I always had this like slight theme of victimhood and separation in the background track of my head. And I never felt good enough. I always felt like I was competing for something. And that felt stressful. And while that did motivate me in some ways, I so love that version of me because of how she reacted in some respects. But I look at her reactions and just the garbage that was going on in her head, where I was always fearful of the rug being swept out from under me, or I always felt like I was competing for something. And that, oh, is exhausting. Even like talking about it, I felt like my belly and my chest tense up. And that was just no way to live. And yet, it's such an ingrained part of our society to always believe that we have to keep an eye out. We have to wait for the other shoe to drop. We have been conditioned in our world to see through the lens of fear, and alcohol only perpetuates that feeling because alcohol rewires our brain and really prevents us from being able to handle adversity and challenge in our life. And so when those troublesome scenarios come up, we automatically kind of go into gloom, doom, and disaster. And while I was a great problem solver, the problems in my soul, my more spiritual, existential problems, were not easy to solve. Were not easy to solve at all as a drinker. And I will tell you that as I quit drinking and leaned more heavily into those spiritual practices that I had been reading and actually started to embody them and understand them on a very visceral level, all of a sudden, my life started to feel easy. My life started to flow. I started to magnetize and manifest things that I was desiring. My friendships changed. The way in which I saw relationships changed. My ability to handle adversity and to meet a challenge with a cheer really, really changed. And I want to illustrate some of that for you because I know in my soul that my decision to stop drinking is what helped me to shift my life view and what helped me to step into a spiritual relationship of my own understanding and what helped me to become a magnet for my deepest dreams and desires. And what's really helped me just to live a life that I feel really aligned with and really proud of and really happy about. And it feels just so much lighter. And it's difficult to fully explain just how much more beautiful and peaceful I feel. But I know that you know what it feels like to feel chaotic, to feel overwhelmed, to feel off path, to feel like you are always struggling and fighting a battle that is never over. And this doesn't have to mean, this is not a talk about addiction. This is a talk about because I don't really speak to that language, but it's just a talk about life. In life, I felt like I was always struggling, trudging up a hill and getting nowhere fast. And some examples that I'll give you some examples from from several different areas of my life. From a friendship perspective, I actually first, let me pause and rewind. First, I want to help you understand what it looks like to shift from fear to love. And then I'll give you some examples of how that's happened in my life. So when we're looking from a place of fear, at work, that might look like feeling like no one, feeling like your employer just doesn't get you, is out to get you, isn't doing enough, feeling like you can't get the job or the esteem or the credentials you want, even though you're really well respected and everyone appreciates you and everyone thinks you're so intelligent and on point, feeling misaligned with your career, feeling off track, feeling like you don't love what you're showing up to do, feeling like you've invested a ton of time into a career and that you've climbed so far up a ladder that you can't possibly jump off, but you feel completely out of alignment. Um, Maybe even getting very viscerally frustrated and feeling almost an immature sense of rebellion towards an employer or a coworker and just having some kind of hatred and disdain for them. And feeling really maybe just stubborn and kind of having this like, I'll show them kind of mentality about you. In friendships, maybe feeling like your friendships are really dramatic or that your friends don't get you or that you're different from your friends on some level, even though you love them and you appreciate them, but you can't explain. Maybe you just feel separate from them in some way. Or maybe there's a couple of your friends who just really have a couple characteristics that grind your gears and you've never been able to really feel at home with them. Maybe in your financial relationship, you feel a sense of lack. You always feel like there's never enough. You feel like you're grappling and saving and always kind of behind the ball. There are so many ways in which we can see the world through the lens of fear and that we let it play out. We act it out in our lives because that is the lens in which we're seeing. We don't see other possibilities. It's if we have blinders on and we're only able to see the world and the opportunities in front of us in one specific way. And when I was drinking, I felt like I was always on this hamster wheel, this carousel, this groundhog day of repetition. Things get better, but things change and improve and I grow and I don't feel necessarily any better. It's that feeling that you hear people explain when they've reached the top of the top. They got the promotion, whatever, and it doesn't feel any different. And that feels frustrating because you actually deserve to feel elated and excited and in love with your life. And now I'll go ahead and explain how that looks specifically in some categories. So, in friendships and relationships, I felt like I had people who I had in my circle who I couldn't quite connect with. And I always felt like I kind of had to watch my back around them, like they were going to gossip behind my back. And guess what? That's because there were points in my life where I gossiped behind people's back. And as one of my mentors, Jessica Zwei, likes to say, gossip is gross. It has no place. It is the communication mechanism of a dysregulated, low self-esteem person. Gossip is not our friend. And yet I participated in gossip and I've gotten caught up in it before. I remember when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, I loved entertainment. I loved things like Keeping Up with the Kardashians and Real Housewives and all of those shows that were just gossip energy. And in last week's episode, I literally named it Real Housewife energy or Housewife energy, which is just dramatic and catty and spiteful and watch your back. Someone could always be talking about you and judging you and, just ew, gross energy. And as I stopped drinking, I found that I actually didn't have the tolerance emotionally, like energetically, for that energy. So when I shifted from the lens of fear to the lens of love, I no longer was entertained by Real Housewives. In fact, I started to feel viscerally irritated by it. Like I could not watch it anymore. It would keep me up and I would just feel really upset by it. Like, why are these people acting this way? I just like I couldn't fathom it when just a couple months beforehand, I had been completely entrenched in it. And now all of a sudden I could care less. In my friendships, I no longer had time for drama and spite and hate and just low energy. In fact, I actively would catch myself when I was thinking ill thoughts of someone or judgmental thoughts, and I would say, "This doesn't feel good. I want to feel differently." And in A Course in Miracles, the definition of a miracle is a shift in perception, a shift from looking through the lens of fear to looking through the lens of love. So in my friendships, when I stopped drinking, I actually had three specific friends who I remember thinking, "Wow, I just see how they are. And I know that they're going to judge me for not drinking." And I was just like prepared to have to defend myself to them. And that didn't feel good. Like having this like speech in the back of my head, this speech where I was just going to show them how mature I was or show them how much better I was as a non-drinker. That was the antithesis of what it is like to be in the lens and the spirit of love. And I remember catching myself in this rehearsing of a speech in my head, of rehearsing what I would say if they like drunkenly made fun of me. And I know that this is really important because I know that many of you have done this. You've rehearsed in your head what you're going to say or what you're going to tell someone who you are afraid is going to judge your decision not to drink. And I was doing this too. And I caught myself and I said, "You know what? Universe, I need a miracle. I am really, really having a hard time with these specific friendships and I'm ready to see them differently. Help me to see them through the lens of love because always holding my breath and prepping for them to say something nasty doesn't feel good. I want to think better of them and I want to think better of myself. Please show me a miracle. Show me how to see this differently." And you know what? This is truly beautiful because most of my friends were very accepting and accommodating in my friend group from back in the day. But these specific three friends, I will be darned if each of them individually, void of my nudging, did not reach out to me and go out of their way to support my lifestyle. One of them, really went out of their way to make sure that they had non-alcoholic beverages at a party, which wasn't a thing of those times. Another one of them had overheard someone at a pool party talking about the fact that she wanted to quit drinking. And she kind of intervened in the conversation and said, "Oh my God, you need to follow my friend Amanda. She is talking about this. You need to meet her." And so she went out of her way to advocate for me. Another one of them was always finding these articles on non alcoholic beverages and the sobriety movement and sending them to me. And every time that happened, I just had to smile and say, "Thank you, universe. You heard me. You heard me and you showed me the miracle I needed to see." And although I don't have extremely close relationships with any of these three women any longer, I love and respect them. And I was able to separate from those friendships with from a really high vibe place. And I know that I could call any of them at any time and I welcome them to call me. We connect from time to time. And wow, I'm just so glad that I was willing to be wrong. I was willing to be wrong and shift from seeing those relationships from the lens of fear to the lens of love. And let me tell you what, that is some massive, to wrap this back around, massive main character energy to show up and see the world from a positive place, from a loving place. Like anyone can see the world through the lens of fear and through the lens of negativity and through the lens of judgment and cattiness and drama. That's not a special skill at all. That is low vibe, cheap seat entertainment. Okay. And making the conscious decision to rewire your brain, to rewire the way that you look at things, and to choose to see them from a place that is patient, is kind, is loving, is giving, is generous. That's some amazing shit, my friend. That is some amazing, truly triumphant ways of living. And this has served me over and over and over again. You know, when I left my 9 to 5 job, there was some really hurtful drama that was occurring. And, you know, there was an executive that was brought in to oversee myself and all of the VPs at my level. And everyone just butted heads with him, but he specifically butted heads with me. And he was out to get me. And every day I would stop. And this isn't to tell you to be a doormat, and this isn't to tell you not to advocate for yourself, because I still did that, but I was willing not to make him the twerp that he was acting out to be sometimes. I was willing to see him through the lens of love. And most importantly, it's really important to me that I keep super high integrity relationships with all of my past coworkers, all of my past jobs. I don't want to be the person who left with drama and, oh my God, they were so awful. They should have treated me better. I was totally in the right. Because guess what? There were places where I wasn't in the right. And not that I did anything terrible, but there were places where I could have showed up differently. And I wanted to leave that job with really high integrity and close connections, because there was so much about it that I appreciated. And I was not about to let this one guy who swept in and just had a vibe about him, I was not about to let him ruin it for me. And so I prayed every day when I went in to allow me to be patient, allow me to be kind, allow me to be loving, allow me to see him through the lens of love and innocence, because underneath it all, I knew that even though he was not going to be able to see it, that he was a hurt little boy. And if I were to look at him as that hurt little boy instead of as an adult man who could be doing things a little better, I was able to react to him in such a different way and able to be patient with him when I really just wanted to pull a housewife move and flip over a table some days and tell him off, or, you know, just really tell him what I thought of him. And my ability to do that has granted me relationships. It allowed me to leave that job with integrity. It allowed me to leave that job and see it as a really loving job versus like, I know so many people, and I'm sure you can think about people, you know, who do this, who just slander their past employer. They just talk shit about their past job. And that's not how I wanted to be. I didn't want to be a gossip and a shit talker. And I wanted, I wanted something different. And so I did that. And you know what? I have amazing relationships still with most of the people from that job and from my prior job and from any job I've ever had. In fact, I would say that it's so miraculous and beautiful as I look back at all of my past kind of careers where I was working for someone else, and how much integrity and closeness I still have with each of those people. And that's, I think, something to be really proud of. And I am really proud of that. And that is because of my choice to see through love instead of fear. And in my romantic relationships, in my day to day, there are so many opportunities for me to be a curmudgeon, for me to be um, upset. And instead, I choose to see through love. I choose to see possibility and potential where before I would have seen pain and misfortune. And that feels really good to me. That feels so much better. And this isn't some, you know, Pollyanna, I'm just overlooking all the bad things in the world. This is, I choose to be angry when I need to be angry. I choose to be upset when I need to be upset. I choose to process and feel my emotions, but I choose not to react and respond from those emotions unless I need to, unless I truly need to. And now I can say, from being 6 years alcohol free, that I know typically the difference from between when I need to and when I actually need to take a breath and say, wait a second, Amanda, you needed a second to respond, because your primal brain is going to respond from the place of fear. And that's not you. That is not you, because you are generous and kind and loving. And wow, I just can't say enough about how much better it feels, and how challenging it is sometimes, because there are times when I want to throw a tantrum and be a child and give someone a piece of my mind. And man, let me tell you what, I can come up with some zingers. I can come up with some zingers. But I have learned that you are going to get further faster and with more friends and with more supporters and with more advocates than if you just choose to show up and pause sometimes versus to clap back at someone. And this has served me so well in my career here, because what I'm talking about irritates people sometimes. And what I'm talking about triggers people. And I've had very, very few In my history of the last 5 years teaching in the alcohol-free space, I've had very few people clap back at me. And I think that is because I have mostly harnessed the ability to pause and regulate myself before I share information or before I speak. And I'm doing it from a place of my inner centeredness versus from a place of the ego. And that is what I want from you. I want you to, when you are met with the adversity of a family challenge and you just want so bad to make the other person wrong, to put them in their place, I want you to pause and say, what good is that going to do? Are they really going to be able to hear me? And are they really going to be able to, support a conversation if I come at them with that energy? And typically the answer is no. So, what I train my clients in and how I support my clients is helping them to kind of pause and take a step back. In fact, I offer in my one on one coaching, all of my clients get unlimited access to me via a chat app where if they're having one of these moments where they're so tempted to react from a place of fear, they can message me instead and they can sound off and say, this is my housewife response. This is where I want to snap my finger and like wag my head. Um, and just really give them a piece of my mind. And I want to pause and I open up to a different way to view this. And sometimes the miracle comes to them just by asking, just by sharing, and just by like getting it off their chest in the voice message to me. And sometimes the miracle is we talk it out and I offer them a different perspective. And that's a really evolved thing to do, is to say, hey, I wonder where I might be wrong here. I wonder where I might be reacting from fear and ingrained behavior versus truth and love. And again, this is a practice you can choose not to do at all. I know plenty of people who are alcohol free who do not employ these practices. But I think because you're here, in fact, I know because you're here, you are on a spiritual path. And I know that you seek for this. I know that your soul seeks for this. And your soul yearns from this. Your soul also yearns to be more centered, more peaceful, more productive, more inclusive, and to find more ease. I know that you seek for that. I know that that is your heart's desire, even if you haven't fully realized it yet. And I'm here to support you in that. And so with that, I want to offer a couple of different ways that you can learn to embody this energy a little bit more. If you have not yet joined my free 5-day series, Awaken Without Alcohol, you can enroll in it absolutely anytime. I'll put the link down in the show notes, but you can find it in my social media bio or on my website. It is an amazing 5-day video series where I take you through my philosophy around shifting your mindset around alcohol, spirituality, and some of the things that become available to you as you step onto the spiritual path with a clear head. And then if you really want to dive deep, or if you've already taken Awakened Without Alcohol, I really cannot recommend and hype myself up enough with my program, Stop Drinking, Start Manifesting. You can enroll anytime, but if you're listening to this live or live-ish, I decided to do a special for my birthday, which was last week. And that was 2/21. So today is 2/28. And if you're listening live, I am running a special in celebration of my birthday month, and I'm happy to extend it to you a little bit more if you're not getting this quite live. So just reach out to me and I'll make a special code for you. But I'm offering 21% off of the course, Stop Drinking, Start Manifesting. But the real kicker I've realized is when you do the course and you get some one-on-one support for me. So I used to only run this as a hybrid course where you would do the course and you would have one-on-one with me. And so I'm bringing it back for 5 spots. I don't know how many I will have by the time this airs because I super marked them down. But if you would like to do hybrid and do the 8-week course, Stop Drinking, Start Manifesting, which is truly some of my most profound work, this course will change the way you think about drinking, think about yourself, think about your connection to the universe and your ability to call in your desires. It is magic. This is exactly the formula that I have used in my own life and what I share with my clients. And if you want to do that course in correlation with coaching with me, I never do less than a 4-month package, but I will do a 4-session package so that every 2 weeks during that course, you and I get to have a one-on-one session together. And in between, I'll also give you the unlimited chat access to me that the rest of my clients get. And so for 5 of you, this is a really nice opportunity. I think that the investment will absolutely pay off for you because this is the combination of programs and support that my most successful and magnetic clients have gone through in the past couple of years. So I invite you to check that out. I will put a link down in the show notes for Stop Drinking, Start Manifesting as well. And if you don't listen to this exactly live, just message me. And as long as it's within the first week of March or so, I will get you hooked up with a discount. And one of those 5 spots, if any of them are still available. So I cannot wait to help you shift and see through the lens of love. I know that it will improve your life. And I know that it will help you show up with a level of main character energy that is truly inspiring to other people and will help you create more opportunities and connections in your life when you show up in this way. And I really cannot say enough for how this shift in perspective and shift of worldview and shift in mindset and way I take action has helped me in my life, and it has helped and supported my clients as well. And I know that it will help and support you. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being open to shifting your perspective. And I hope to hear from you soon and talk to you next week.